Hello, I'm Emma, founder of Nurse Fern, your source for remote and alternative nursing jobs. Today, I get to interview a nurse who not only works remotely as a freelance writer, but also runs an agency and helps other nurses set up independent writing practices. I'm excited to welcome Janine Kelbach of the Savvy Nurse Writer, the Savvy Scribe Podcast, and Write RN. Welcome, Janine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited. This is a really popular request and topic in the Nurse Fern community, so I'm stoked you're able to come on and offer some insight into freelance writing for all of us. I'm going to kick things off with having you share what your nurse origin story is. Before you started all of the freelance writing and your agency, what was baby nurse Janine?
Baby nurse Janine didn't know she wanted to be a nurse actually until I had to do service hours when I was a junior in high school, and I picked the local hospital because it was close, and I had to answer the door on the OB maternity unit and make charts and stuff. And I have an identical twin sister, and we're doing this together. We were both working at Burger King at the time. And our thought process was, well, this looks cooler than Burger King. And that was my origin. It was basically, I think every nurse, we have this inside ability to want to care and help. That was definitely me. Loved anybody I cared for. So it wasn't just OB, labor and delivery moms, but I loved every clinical rotation. I loved the connection I had with every patient. And I knew obviously it was a good fit. Coming out of school, I actually didn't know, I knew I wanted to do OB. I liked the emergency room vibe, like the triage. I liked OR. I liked the adrenaline rush of a delivery. And if a baby is bad or a mom starts to hemorrhage, I liked that. And not that you like it, but you know what I mean, the adrenaline behind it. So there was always more good than bad in that field. And even the bad, it was okay. Like I could handle it. And I wasn't scared of blood. I didn't get queasy. I enjoyed surgery. So it was just like a good fit for me. So that's where my passion fit. And that's kind of how I started in the career of nursing.
When did the transition for you start to happen from being straight clinical to moving into what you're doing now?
So I was always one of those nurses I was always bored in a sense of, I was always on to the next thing. Like I started on postpartum and then I went to my director like immediately. And I was like, okay, so after this, then what am I doing? Well, you can start going to some code pinks and maybe like scrubbing in. Okay, perfect. So then I do that. Okay, so now I'm done with that. So like now what? Okay, you want to learn labor? Yep, I want to do that. Okay, then you want to do charge? Yep, I want to do that. So I was always like seeking out different things. I don't know if it was boredom or I was just like ready for a different challenge. Then, I did the charge nurse thing. I did preceptor. I went into assistant management role. I worked at triage center downtown and did some home care stuff in OB. And then I was on night shift, 12-hour night shifts. I was like dreading going to work. And then I knew something was wrong because I shouldn't dread going to the maternity ward. Like I shouldn't dread that. There was something that I was like, I got to do something else. I want to be home more. I just want to be home more. So then I did what probably many nurses in your community did, was what can a nurse do from home? What can I do as a nurse on the side? Google. Now this was back in 2013, so 10 years ago, and the internet has changed vastly and the remote work for nurses has changed vastly. And so freelance writing for nurses wasn't really known. And I had no idea what a freelancer was. So I was like ignoring that search. And what I came upon was writing as a mom. And I was like, well, so they're with nursing. I was like, oh, I'm a mom. I can write like other moms are. So I was in this like Facebook group where moms were writing and getting paid for it. I wrote an article, I got paid for it. Another mom in that group was like, but you're a nurse? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, why are you here? Like you can help so much more like in the health sector. And I'm like, oh, I know like people hired nurses to write. And she's like, people hire moms to write. Why wouldn't they hire nurses to write? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it was like a light bulb. So then I started to just go down that pathway a little bit and figure it out as I went. And then I landed a couple clients. Like my first big client was Healthline. And I realized, okay, this is legit. I'm starting to make some money, made an LLC and started just one day at a time, pushing it forward. And my one goal was to make as much money in one 12-hour shift so I could cut down one day at the hospital and at least have one day extra at home. And I was able to do it.
Okay, I'm going to bump a question from the community from lower because you brought it up. How long did it take you once you started freelance writing to replace your full-time income?
It's a tough question for me to answer because by the time I wasn't one of these that was like, okay, I'm quitting my job now. I was like hanging on I don't even know why. I don't even know why I hung on so long, honestly. So my first 6-figure year, which was higher than I was making as a nurse, was in 2019. Started my business in 2015, but I didn't take it seriously until about mid 2017, 2018. I would say about a year and a half, but that was like being consistent. I'm not a good example of that, I guess, because I could have done
I think
it sooner.
you're a good
and
example.
I've seen other nurses do it sooner.
Because we tend to say
overnight.
like, I didn't take it seriously, but we were learning and growing the whole time. So it's the pace you took it at. Yeah.
Like I think if I had help, I could have done it a lot faster, but I didn't have any help. I was just kind of figuring it out. So I think if you have help, it goes like way faster.
Freelance writer, independent practice, but now you have Write RN, you have a course, you have a podcast. Like, how did this domino out for you? Things started smaller. So how did they like progress for you?
Baby RN. Janine,
yeah,
Write RN.
Baby writer Janine.
Started my business. I had consistent clients enough where I was making my goal. My goal was 1 12-hour shift a week. And so that's what I was making a month. So I was okay there. That was another thing. My goal wasn't to replace my full-time income. It was just to do that. And I was happy with that. Well, other nurses were coming to me online in the online world. They see an article somewhere and, Janine, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of did it. But here's what I did. Here, jump on a call with me. So I would coach these nurses for free because I was just telling people what to do. They were able to build their business in like a year at like full-time income. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, if she did that and she did that and she did that, I'm sure I could help other people. So then I started doing group coaching. I was getting the same questions over and over and over. And I was like, well, let's do this in a group. So we did it in a group. Still would get the same questions. Then I would get people in the group that were at different levels. And I was like, okay, let's do a course for this because then I can answer all the questions and people can just go to the area of the course where they need help the most. And then they're not getting useless information they might already know. So that's how my coaching side or course that it is now, membership, Savvy Nurse Writer, came about. And that came with a podcast as well. Podcast was just the marketing tool for the course. That's how that fits in together. Now, my freelance writing, Write RN, which is now an agency, Write RN, started actually in 2020 when the world fell apart. What was happening then is Janine was overwhelmed. I had my 2 boys who had to be homeschooled. I was the OB educator in our unit. So I had 2 units. We are sister hospitals, about 20 minutes apart. So I had the 1 unit and then I had another unit. And I was on flexible kind of hours to meet night shift and day shift needs. And they put me on these committees for the pandemic. COVID was scary because nobody knew what was happening, let alone to pregnant and newborn people. Plus, I was now making 6 figures in the business. And I didn't want that to leave. I was like, I have built this thing. I can't just let it go. And I was actually getting busier as a freelancer. Healthcare companies were coming to us for content on COVID, on everything. So mental health, all the things. So I was like, look, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I'm not letting this go. Well, those nurses I coached and helped them build their business, they were still thriving, loving their businesses. I was like, do you guys need any work? Because I need to offload some stuff. I want to keep my business, but I can't handle all this. Yeah. So we subcontracted the work over to them. Well, then I was like, I have an idea. What if Julie, who's in oncology, Rachel, who's in anesthesiology, so-and-so who's in cardiology, what if I was able to help at the bigger hospitals or bigger healthcare organizations with specialized nurses that could write to that? So they come to me and they're like, Janine, do you write in oncology? I'm like, no, but I know Julie does. That's how the agency started, was now we can take on projects and then fit that writer into that specific project. And then the writer doesn't have to go find their own jobs. And it's evolved. Like, so Write RN is not the same Write RN it was in 2020. Now we have a internal editor, a project manager, and we have a content manager as well. We have like a team of us, and it's really cool. It really has evolved into such a cool niche agency in a sense. I didn't even know it was an agency.
Really
I had no idea
impressive.
what that meant either. One day somebody was like, Janine, you have an agency. I'm like, I do? I don't even know what that means, but sounds good.
It's okay. One day somebody told me, they're like, so you have a media company? And I was like, oh, I have a media company.
It sounds so professional.
Yeah, like, okay.
I was just doing this to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just doing like the next thing in line, and this is what happened. Yeah. That is so cool though that you offer, because I find one of the hardest things about having your own business is like having somebody there that has been through it and no BS, just be like, you should probably do this next. That's so helpful.
Yes, that next step is so hard, especially when you're like, I want to start a business. And then even if you have an idea for a business, like I want to start a freelance writing business, but then what? Because then it's like, I don't know where to start. And it's not the same for everybody. And it's a hard road going down alone. That's for sure.
Talking about hard roads, what has been the most humbling part of being a freelance writer for you?
Yeah. So I was always told I was a good writer. And I was like, okay, I'm a good writer, until I started writing and getting edits. Those edits from editors are like red lines all over the paper, like your, seventh grade paper, and it's all red and it says F on it. That's what I thought it was, but it wasn't. It was actually just an editor giving you some help. Man, that part, that rejection feeling really sucks. Like that was definitely humbling. I've gotten over it now. I just know editors, that's their job. It's like Jaco coming into your hospital and like you do your best and they still find something and you're like, that's their job. That's their job. You still got to find something. But what I find is that the other thing that's hard is rejection from clients. So you pitch yourself and you think, you're great. You have testimonials and you know your service can help them, and they still say no. They put down your pricing and you're like, I'm worth this. So that's hard. Like the first time that happened was really tough. And sometimes it's still tough when I think it's easy to just say like, oh, you'll pitch clients and you'll get work and blah, blah, blah. But there's definitely ebbs and flows to the freelance business that, you lose a client and you can easily jump to that place of, oh my God, I need to go back to the hospital. I'm never going to do that. But, I think it's just, it's part of the career, unfortunately.
Having been freelance writer and now getting pitches in my inbox, I never not want to respond to somebody, but sometimes I have a fear of ghosting people, and I realize I'll have a email sitting in the bottom of my inbox for like a month and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I never replied to you. Like, I don't need anything right now, but I need you to know that I support you.
And that's so helpful, right? To the freelancer, because it's like you send this and you're like, I don't think anybody's reading it. Must have gone to spam, or they just trashed it or whatever.
Next community question, since we just launched through this avenue: pitching versus being assigned. Do you do both? Can you do one or the other? Like, how does that work?
I think my advice to everybody is to never let your marketing stop. I don't care if your plate is full, never stop pitching, because you never know when there's going to be a shortage the next month. You can always talk to somebody and like give them a shorter package or whatever, or up the rates for the current clients you have, whatever that is. Because once you stop marketing yourself and pitching, you're never going to get back into it. And if you can keep a consistency going, you'll always have work.
Yeah, I find I get reminded too by past writers when they come back into my inbox like 2 months later and they're like, hey, I was thinking about something. I'm like, that is a really freaking cool idea. And I didn't have to come up with it.
Yes.
Like, please take this and run with it.
And that's, I think a lot of the people these days are so busy as like business owners or whoever you're writing for, they're busy. And so to come up with fresh content and new ideas is so welcomed. If people, they're not seeing you, even if you pitch them, it might not be the right timing. And follow-up is so important.
I like the new perspective too. Often things don't change on a fundamental level, but you get so in it, you don't see like the little interesting angles you can take it from.
Exactly.
And I appreciate pitching.
Yeah, I always had this fear of like people thinking I'm so annoying. And when I would reach out on LinkedIn, I'd reach out to potential clients and just introduce myself and whatever, and get a call with somebody. And every single person, I probably in the last like year and a half, I've noticed this with every conversation, just because I'm paying attention better. They thank me and they're like, thank you for reaching out to me. And I'm like, here's me thinking I'm annoying all the time, and these people are thanking me because they don't have to look for somebody. Yeah, they actually, most people appreciate the pitching more than anything else. I don't think I've actually ever had anyone say, please don't pitch me, you're annoying.
They just delete it and then you don't know and you email them.
Just delete it. Yeah, you can do that, just don't tell me I'm annoying.
So if you had to start everything all over, like you were a nurse in 2023, I think that's the year we're in, and you were like, I want to do freelance writing, what would you do?
I would join a community, find a mentor, find a course. And I don't want to say follow somebody who's way ahead of you. Follow somebody who's just a little bit ahead of you. So that's why communities are great, because you always have people of all different levels helping at all different levels. I think I remember, if you look at me now and think that it happened overnight and this is where you're going to be tomorrow, it's not going to happen that way. But you find somebody who's starting out in December of 2023, when you're starting out in December 2023, and you're working together and you guys have accountability, it's a game changer and you'll move so much faster through all of it. I did not have that. So that's what I would suggest.
I think that is really important because it is, like I said a second ago, about like figuring out content ideas. It's hard when you're so far ahead. So it's important to have the people that you interact with at different steps so that you are reminded and can handle those challenges.
Yeah. And it's true because even me for my podcast all the time, like, I don't know what else to talk about. I feel like I talked about everything, but sometimes you have to revisit topics because I've been doing the podcast since 2019. Things have changed or people didn't hear it because they weren't around in 2019 when I started. So I think that's always a tough thing for me being further down the road. And there's nothing to be wrong with it. I just have to keep that in mind for myself and, revisit every once in a while.
So you would think from our conversation that our biggest challenge is content ideas, but it's not.
You would think.
You would think, but no, that's exciting. That's a fun problem. What has been your biggest challenge as an entrepreneur?
Leaving my nursing job. That was the biggest challenge for me. Like I said, I hung on for, it's a funny story actually, how I hung on to it. I had PTO. I had 280 hours of PTO. And I was like, well, I'll just use my PTO. And I would actually use a PTO day to work on my business. So I was getting paid to work on my business. That's always a little life hack I tell some nurses that are doing this. And so I had 280 hours of PTO and I'm like, I could just use that on my, I could still work this job and still use PTO as my days for my business. It'll all work out fine. Well, then I realized they would keep me so busy, I couldn't take a day off. So I had all these PTO hours and I'm like, so my friend Deanna was like, Janine, why are you not why are you staying? I'm like, oh, because my PTO. She's like, you just said you can't use them. I'm like, yeah, I know. And then it clicked through one day we were talking and I'm like, the next day I'm like, I'm quitting my job. She goes, what? I go, I'm quitting my job. And it's so true that the quote out there, I think Tony Robbins said it, it's like where the focus goes, your energy flows. As soon as I quit my job, I went all in with my business. It was 3 times the success that I had prior. So if you could just focus on one thing, and I have a really hard time doing that. I always had 3 jobs at one time. I think a lot of entrepreneurial people do that. They have a lot of things going on, but if you could focus on one of them, you'll definitely make more progress than just doing this. You got to have some sort of consistency too. You can't just be I'll do my writing job on Thursdays. It almost has to be an everyday thing when you're starting out, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, just to keep the momentum going.
I'm laughing internally because you said you always had 3 jobs. And I'm like, you have 3 projects.
Right? I'm bored. I'm always no. And everybody's like, I don't know how you get everything done. I'm like, it's really structured in an unstructured way. I know what I'm doing in the morning. I have a little schedule in my brain. It doesn't always work out, but I have to have it scheduled or I couldn't do anything. But I used to, yeah. So I used to have 3 jobs. I would do the hospital. I'd have this. And then one time I was assistant newborn photographer. And then another time I was an assistant with nursing research. I would do nursing research and do the clinical visits. I had another side job where I was doing home care for OB patients in Cleveland. So all these little side things. And I think that's also how I knew freelancing was where I wanted to be because I knew a new nursing job wasn't going to fix my problem. It was just going to add to the problem.
And all those areas that you gained experience in really help you in writing. It was all just
part
of
the
path.
The home care one, I will tell you, was the one that made that switch go off because I was I'm a motivated person. Nobody has to tell me what to do. I only have to report to the center if something's wrong. Nothing's ever wrong. Or somebody forgot their med or whatever. Easy stuff. And I can chart and I get my work done. And that to me, I was like, okay, I can be an entrepreneur because I'm motivated. If you're not motivated to do your work and you need somebody to tell you what to do every day, entrepreneurial life, don't start a business. It won't work.
Follow-up question on that, because I do know it's really scary because a lot of nurses in our community, especially we have this remote nurse quiz. And if you pick that you need flexibility and you want to make your own hours, you're obviously going to get funneled into nurse freelance writing as one of your results. But can you tell me a little bit more how agency work can help hedge that fear and bet of fully starting your own business?
I like your little quiz idea because that is exactly what freelance writing is. You have your own hours, you do your own flexibility, but I don't think building a business is for everybody. So like I said, the agency work is great if you have a good agency that would give you work. You have to make sure that's consistent because you can't build a business from it if you don't know if it's going to be consistent. And if that's the case, you kind of have to be an employee. That being said, your network of remote jobs is awesome because even if you find a remote clinical writer position, you're usually not tied to your computer from 9 to 5 every day. It's still deadline driven. You may have to do meetings and stuff, but you're an employee. So I think the remote thing's great. I think remote work is wonderful, but I don't think everybody's built to build a business. I think that really comes internally and it's not for everybody. But it's definitely something to explore if it's something you're really passionate about. But I think there's flexibility in different ways. And I think it almost depends on how much flexibility you want versus how much much drive you have to build a business, because just because you have flexible hours, building a business is not easy and you still have to work hard.
I like that. How do you, this actually turned out to be the perfect caveat. Can you share about your course and how you help nurses build their business?
Inside the membership, we have obviously the group. You get the course. It's called Plan, Produce, Profit. And we walk you through all of the areas to plan, produce, profit your business. And then we also have the writing skills course. And what that is, something that would have helped Janine back in the day. So Janine thinks she's a good writer, submits her stuff to her client, and then gets all the red lines. And my editor helps me a little bit, but this course will help you become an amazing writer. We have our editor at our agency edit all the pieces and gives you like really concrete feedback on what to do better. And at the end of that, you get 5 pieces to add to your portfolio. So they're all edited and good to go. So you feel confident showing potential clients what you're worth. And then you get a roadmap, right? Because we all need that roadmap. We don't know where we're going. So that gives you those next best steps. Resource library, you get like all the systems and templates and everything that I use in my business and that I share with you guys and how to use it. You get a Kajabi app is what it's called. And Kajabi is, you get 2 apps. You get the app for the course. There's audio with the course too, so you can watch it when you're like folding laundry. And then you can join the community, which is amazing because everybody's in there, different places along the way. And that's where you post your questions and whatnot. And then we have live workshops. We have 2 workshops a month with guests. Somebody came on one today and was talking about how she built her business when she was 8 months pregnant. And then I had another person come on and they were talking about building sales funnels. And then we also do like a master class every month where I do the master class. I give you guys like a training. And then the next week I show you how I use it in my business. And then the next week we bring in a student who might need some extra help, who wants to be like in a hot seat and kind of help them through. And then the 4th week, we always of the month, we just have like an implementation week so that you can put that into your list. And then we have, there's so much Q&A times. We have co-working sessions so we keep each other accountable. We have our morning huddle on Mondays where we post our goals for the week and all of us help each other along that. And then we also have a writing leads list. And this is like your group where you have your remote jobs. It's for nurses who want writing jobs. So they're health writing jobs only. Some are full-time, some are contract only, but it kind of gives you, as you know, saves them a ton of time looking for those jobs across the web. That's it. That's all you get.
I'm hung up on a couple of things because I probably didn't accurately, and my group probably doesn't know this, that I used to do personal finance freelance writing. I never found a course that actually taught you how to do the writing. It was all about how to start your business and market. Constantly, the questions always revolved around, how do I actually write a blog? How do I do a white paper? How do I do this? And then having an editor and coming out with 5 pieces for your portfolio. And that was a community question too. How do I build my portfolio so that you have something to show people? That is very unique and very cool that it's part of what you do to help nurses. I think it's the harder part. So most people don't offer it.
Yes. Well, that, and it's like, it was definitely a gap where I would have like all these nurses that wanted to come start their businesses, but they were stuck because they didn't know if they were a good writer. And I didn't have time to look through everyone's writing to give them feedback, but no, that's Nicole's thing. Like, she loves to edit. So I was like, I'll pay you to do this if you help me with that. And then here we are. It works out really, really well for everybody.
So now with the last few minutes, I have some more community questions. I think we've hit most of them, but I'm going to pick and choose from here on the ones we haven't hit yet. Can you write anonymously?
Yes. So there's actually 2 things. One, I would ask, why are you writing anonymously? And it's usually because they're scared. They're scared for people to know that they're a writer. And I get that because people say it all the time. I'm a nurse manager, so I don't want people to think I'm writing. Why? So you got to get over that hurdle of the why, because a lot of times it's holding you back from propelling forward with a business. Don't worry about it, because I'll tell you what, no one cares. You think they care? No one cares. Just start your business. If your boss really cares that you're starting a business, it's probably not a good job to be in, because your boss should be a person who's pushing you forward in whatever you want to do career-wise. Now, there's also something called ghost writing, where you write for a company and you do not get what's called a byline, where it says Janine Kelbach wrote this article. It just says this company wrote this article. That's ghost writing, and that's anonymously writing, usually for higher compensation because you're not getting credit. There's two sides of that I always hear. They're like, oh, can I write anonymously? And I'm thinking ghost writing. I'm like, nope, it's because they're scared to launch their business.
And I feel that deep inside. I'm like, yes, I've been there.
Me too.
Are you paid per word or assignment?
It's it's kind of a mix. Like it's per word in a range. Say it's 500 to 800 word article. That's how I package it. So it's per piece. That's like 500 to 800 words, for example. I would never say 500 words and I would never say 600 words, because then you're either fluffing things to get to that 600 or going a little bit over and then cutting it down. But if you have a range of like 300 words, you can play with it a little bit. Don't do by word. It causes issues for everybody.
It's also really complicated to figure out.
Do you include the references? Do you include your byline? Do you include the title? Just do it.
Do I get paid for my name?
Yeah, can I use my full name and middle name too?
Acronyms. Should I throw all those on?
All the acronyms.
Simplicity is key. So I think this one's interesting because even now I like have this question for writers because I'm just curious. I'm like, how fast are you? How much can you take on? So the question is, how often are you writing, and are you writing for several sources?
I won't be a good answer because I'm not writing much anymore because I'm doing the agency. But honestly, I always tell people, like, if you think you're going to do 12 hours a day as a writer, you're not. Your brain will explode. Like, that's too much mental work, and everybody works differently. I know a lot of people that take on multiple different sources. Yes. And I did too when I was writing. I think if you're thinking you're going to bust out 4 blogs a day or something, you're crazy. They're not going to be quality or anything. I liked to do all my research in one day for all my projects and then write drafts like every other day and then look at the drafts from the prior day on that second day, because when you walk away, and then you go back to it and you're like, what was I on when I wrote this? You're like, oh, okay, let's edit this a little bit. You want time away from your piece to be able to edit it a little bit better.
New freelance writers, how many articles like per week do you find somebody can comfortably handle and put out good work?
Usually about two.
Yeah.
Depending how heavy too the load is. Like if you're writing for these tech companies that are only focused on businesses, that's a heavier load than writing about fish oil for your heart, something like that. It's definitely a different mental load on some of those projects. And I think a lot of people always ask me like, well, I don't know, do I just write blog articles? So you mentioned like white papers and stuff, but I think a lot of people don't know how many things are that you can write. Like in my course, I have like a list of like 37 of them, 37 different types of content that you can write that you're like, oh, well, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. It's not just blog articles. I preach the blog article because it's easier to get into and it's easier as a freelancer to kind of start out with, but that's not the limit. There's so many ways you can go with it.
I'm trying to find my brain again. I had a follow-up. I remembered it.
You got it? All right, let's go.
Yeah, big topic because of ChatGPT, AI, and freelance writing. I know I often get the question of, do I even think this career is going to exist anymore soon?
Is it going to exist soon? Yes, it's always going to exist. I think AI right now is like a kid in the candy store. I think a lot of companies are trying it out. They're seeing what they can do with it. Then they realize it's very robotic and it's not exactly what they want. And they may have produced a lot of content with it already, and that's fine, but it's coming full circle back. And a lot of clients are coming back now saying, all right, well, we did this AI stuff. We weren't very happy with it. Can you do this for us? Like, that's a lot of what I'm getting now. Do I think AI has a place for freelance writers to use it as a tool? And do I think it has a place in businesses? Absolutely. I think it's great for idea generation. I think it's great for so many things. I've used it for so many things, but it's not good for writing blogs or article or anything in general, because it's the human to human connection that you're not getting. And I think too, the beginning of it, nobody knew that it was like AI written. So you didn't really know until you started reading more and more of it. And now if you've been around for a little while reading AI stuff, you know immediately that AI wrote it. And Google's not stupid. Google knows they're going to get it soon enough that it's all AI generated and that stuff's not going to rank. Google's also very into expertise, authoritativeness, and they want people who are writing the articles to have experience in that field. And they know when robots don't. It's going to take a little bit of time. It might, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but Google's hurting too. They know that AI is taking over in the sense of we're typing into ChatGPT questions that we used to type into Google. So they're losing revenue and business from that. So they're trying to make that better too. So again, they're going to catch up with ChatGPT soon enough here. So I'm not worried about it. I was a little bit earlier this year when people were just really going hard at it, but I don't think it's going to last very long. The clients that are going to use it are the clients that you probably don't want anyway. And I do see a lot of companies hiring content writers still. So I don't think it's something something that is going to the wayside. I think it's very helpful. And I think the role of a freelance writer might change a little bit, where we're doing a little bit more strategy and development for clients as well. They just might want to use a little bit more of our brain than just writing, which is fun. Don't be afraid of that.
Janine, thank you for being here. For everybody watching, all my ferns, you can find all the links to Janine's resources in the description for this video.